is year 2 of the Big 12 Big East battle. These two great basketball conferences getting together over the next week for some really intriguing matchups. I'm John Fancy, your Big East Digital Network correspondent, and we're going down to Texas. My counterpart over at the Big 12, Morgan Uber, covering all things throughout the Big 12 Conference, and doing a little crossover here as we head into the Big 12 Big East battle. So, Morgan, what do you have your eyes on this year in this non-conference showcase?
John, thanks so much for having me. So much fun to collaborate here with you, and just to be sitting here, talking college hoops right now in 2020 is thrilling. So really for me, all these matchups are ones to look forward to because we get to see college basketball. But one that I really have my eye on, it's kind of a pretty good sneaky matchup, Texas against Villanova, because in the Big 12 perspective, for Texas, this would be a huge statement win for head coach Shaka Smart and the Texas Longhorns. They right now, I think this is by far the deepest group that Coach Smart has had in his time at Texas. He has an incredible backcourt. He has these 3 guards with plenty of experience: Courtney Ramey, Andrew Jones, and Matt Coleman. And all 3 of those, they bring experience, they bring this veteran leadership, and are just exceptional. And then in the front court, they also get to bring back Jericho Sims, who missed the last 7 games of last season due to a back injury. So that's a big, addition for them. When I think about Texas, what they did last season, they lost 4 games straight, and then they came right back to win 5 in a row. And they bring back all of those pieces, all of those guys to have that mentality. I think that's really going to help them this season. So the Longhorns, I think, are definitely going to be a pretty good team here in the Big 12. So, Villanova, they better watch out because the Longhorns are coming for them. I know that Coach Smart wants this one pretty bad for his program.
Greg Brown, another one of those newcomers to the Longhorns, has shown some flashes. It'll be an interesting matchup because on the flip side, you bring up Ramey, as well as Coleman and Jones, that trio, 3-headed monster for the Horns. For Villanova, Colin Gillespie is the anchor of that backcourt. He does it all. What happens with Justin Moore, Caleb Daniels, as well as Cole Swider? Can Villanova get those complementary wings to complement Gillespie? It is a fascinating matchup in the backcourt, but the biggest thing for Villanova is Jeremiah Robinson-Earl has really come on. How Texas defends him could end up being the key to that game. Let's turn to a potential Big 12 sleeper. Who do you think could be a team that could get a signature win out of this year's showcase that people might not know as much about?
That's a great question. Right off the bat, I think my mind goes to Oklahoma. And one of the reasons why, we haven't gotten to see much of them yet. We don't know what they're capable of. They were picked 6th, in the Big 12 preseason poll. So I think they have the potential to finish much higher than that. They bring back 4 of their 5 top leading scorers from a year ago, and that's led by guard Austin Reeves and forward Brady Manick. So, of course, when you have those 2 seniors, that veteran leadership, it speaks to what head coach Lon Kruger does there. He develops players. Rarely at Oklahoma do you see the one and dones, other than, of course, Trae Young. But with those 2 seniors, senior veteran leadership is going to be crucial here in 2020, 2021. And I think it's going to really speak volumes what the Sooners are going to be capable of. So keep an eye on the Sooners this year. I think they do have some potential to sneak up there, potentially in the top 5 and in the Big 12, and finish a lot higher than many think.
And what's intriguing about the Sooners in this year's edition of the battle is they'll be taking on Xavier. You're talking about an Oklahoma team picked 6th in the Big 12, a Xavier team that feels shorted that they've been picked 7th in the Big East and would like to outperform that. So this is a critical matchup for these 2 teams who should be in the NCAA tournament conversation, but could help their cause with a win in this case. And you bring up Brady Manick and Austin Reeves. I also would look at Rick Isanza as well, taking a leap. Lon Kruger's talked about him. But I flip the matchup and see a young Xavier backcourt. Juan Odoms looked promising in his first couple of games of his collegiate career, but in the front court, I have my eyes on Zach Fremantle facing Brady Manick in the post, expecting a really physical, intriguing matchup that goes down to the wire and could be decided on who gets that extra board or who makes that extra play. Those 2 players are really strong post players. And for Oklahoma, they've been one of the better defensive teams in the Big 12. Xavier can say the same in the Big East. That is a really interesting matchup. I'm glad that you picked the Sooners there because I've got my eyes on that one too. Let's turn to quite arguably this year the best for last with just the aura of this matchup. Creighton heading to Kansas. You're talking about a top 10 showdown at Allen Fieldhouse, two high-octane offenses. What do you think?
This is just the cherry on top, John, of the Big 12 Big East battle this year. It's really going to be something. I really, watched that Kansas-Gonzaga game closely. And I think the big thing that I noticed was the defensive effort from Kansas. It just wasn't there. They allowed 102 points. It was the most during head coach Bill Self during his entire era being at Kansas. They have the reigning National Defensive Player of the Year in Marcus Garrett. So, it's there. They have the abilities to do it. Kansas, they've won games before with their defense. We saw that, all of last year. So I think if they can get back to that, I think they have a pretty good chance here. I think one of the other things, too, during the Gonzaga game, they missed the interior presence of Big 12 Player of the Year, Udoka Azubuike. That was clear. They're going to need more from their forward, David McCormick. He's got to step up. Coach Self said after that game that he thinks McCormick, by the end of the season, when everything is said and done, that he's going to be the team's leading scorer. So he has the potential. He has the ability to do it. He has, the belief and trust from his head coach. So they need more there, from the 5 spot this season. And so, I think it's really going to be a great game, a great battle. Kansas, they're a much different team than they were a year ago, but we see Coach Self do it year in, year out with different pieces. So, really it's he's quite the master of that. It's going to be a very great game, John. What do you think?
He absolutely is the master of it, Bill Self. And what Greg McDermott's been able to do in Omaha, consistently churning out NCAA tournament caliber teams, and now with the trajectory of this Creighton program to be a program that's sticking in the top 15 to 20 year in and year out, the way they're recruiting and what they've been able to piece together for this year. You brought up the name Marcus Garrett. Well, of course, in the battle, there's a Marcus on the other side, and that's Marcus Zagorowski, who is one of the best point guards in the country. So I am fascinated to see how those two go about it. And then another Kansas player that really stood out last week, Ochai Agbaji. I just thought that he was such a force against Gonzaga. He made things happen, and you have got to mark him. You got to have him prepared for and scouted for because Agbaji can change the game. And on the flip side for Creighton, they've got a Memphis transfer in Antoine Jones who had a really nice debut and can provide length at the wing position, does little things as well, and has some intangibles to the way he plays. So Creighton and Kansas should be a lot of fun. And year 2 of the Big 12 Big East battle, I do not expect it to disappoint. It didn't last year, and you're talking about quite the crossover of talent between these two leagues.
I've had that one circled on my calendar for quite some time. But, John, may the best conference win. We'll see how this goes.
May the best conference win. Morgan Huber coming to us from Texas. I'm John Fanta, right here on the Big East Digital Network.